Hello, my name's Aviva, and today I have some workplace environment romance recommendations for you. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing a bunch of books that I personally very much enjoyed that take place in a workplace environment. It's a pretty simple trope, like all you got to do is find a book that happens to take place in like an office or something very similar to that. But I happen to really enjoy books that are like a kind of workplace environment just because, I don't know, it gives off a vibe. But anyway, the first book that I did want to share with you is The Hating Game, and it's kind of the reason why I thought to make this video now. People are talking about this book all over again because the movie recently came out, and this happens to be an enemies to lovers workplace environment book. So it's kind of what, gave me the idea to make this video, because if you enjoy The Hating Game because of its setting, then you might enjoy some other books that I'm going to mention. But in case you're not familiar, The Hating Game, a movie about it recently came out, and I watched it and I have mixed feelings about it, but that's not what we're here to talk about. The book, though, is an amazing time. It is an enemies to lovers workplace environment, basically about these two people who work in the same office and their desks are facing each other and they can't stand each other. So they're always like messing with each other, and they have all these games that they play, like the steering contest or like the copycat sort of contest and like whatever. Anyway, it's like a whole thing. But my point is that at one point they're going to be pitted against each other for a promotion, and that's when everything kind of takes off and it kind of goes places. So this is a great time if you're into enemies to lovers, if you enjoy workplace environments, and you want to read this book so that you can watch the movie and see what it's all about. I highly recommend it. Next up, I have 99% Mine, which is by Sally Thorne, who is the same author as The Hating Game. And I'm just gonna say it right now, The Hating Game is way better, but if you enjoyed her writing and you wanna see what else she has out there, then I recommend checking this one out, because I personally thought it was a great time. I know that people have like mixed feelings towards it. I personally enjoyed it, but I know that it's not for everyone. But it's basically a brother's best friend trope. It's about this girl who has a twin brother who has a best friend, and she has always had a crush on him. Like, growing up, they were always together, all three of them, and he never reciprocated, but she was always like, crushing on him sort of thing. And now they are adults, and her twin brother just inherited their grandmother's cottage. And part of it is like they have to go and fix it up, and then they have to sell it, and then like that's their inheritance, money that they make off of like the refurbished cottage sort of thing. So basically, the brother's best friend happens to be a construction guy, so he gets the job of refurbishing it, and she is the one that is going to be like managing it sort of thing. So they're basically in a workplace environment of sorts. It's not exactly like, an office, but it's still like, they're in close proximity because they are both working on this project of fixing up this house, and a romance is gonna bloom. Next up, I have Meet You in the Middle by Devin Daniels, which is such an underrated book, and I have absolutely no idea why, because I really think that people would absolutely love this book. It's an enemies to lovers workplace environment, and I just absolutely loved it when I read it. I couldn't put it down. It's basically about these two people. One is a Republican and one is a Democrat, and they both work for senators in their respective parties. And basically, this girl needed something from the senator that the guy works for. So she set up a meeting with this guy, and they had a horrible first encounter, and that kind of pushes them towards the plot line of enemies to lovers. They start messing with each other, they work in the same building, and they start pranking each other and things like that. And then all of a sudden, they're thinking about each other all the time, and then they slowly turn into friends, and then they slowly turn into lovers. And it's such a great time. I thought it was plotted out really well. I was a huge fan, and it kind of makes me sad that more people don't talk about this book, because I really think people would absolutely love it if they gave it a shot. And I personally am the hugest fan of like politics in my books, or in general. Like, I'm not the biggest like political person, and yet I so much enjoy this book. It wouldn't have been as good as it was if it didn't have that political aspect thrown in there, because of the whole like Democrat/Republican. It gave them even more ammunition to like not get along, and it made the book what it was. And I just highly recommend it. I hope that some people pick this book up, because I really don't think you'll be disappointed. Next, I have The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armez, which is a enemies to lovers workplace environment fake dating book. There are so many classic tropes mushed into this 460 page book. It's a great time. It's basically about this girl who lives, I don't know, in the US, and she basically has to go home to Spain for her sister's wedding. And she kind of told her whole family that she's bringing home a date / a boyfriend, except she doesn't have one. So she now has to go find a date, and she can't seem to find anybody. And she's kind of complaining to one of her friends that she works with about the whole situation. And then this guy that is in her office overhears her and is like, you could take me, I'll be your fake date sort of thing. And she's like, why the hell are you offering to do this? We don't get along, because in the office, they really don't get along very well. And basically he's like, you have no other choice, just take me, and like end of story sort of thing. And basically the first half of the book is them kind of being enemies in the workplace, and him basically being like, have you found anybody yet? When's the trip? Let me get ready for it sort of thing. And they do a little bit of fake dating there, and then they basically go to Spain for her sister's wedding in the second half of the book, and then they fake date. So it's a great time. If you're a fan of The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, or like The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, I really do think you'll very much enjoy this book. Also, this book was either nominated or won the Goodreads Choice Awards for this year. I'm not really sure what, but I saw a bunch of stuff surrounding that. So basically, I'm not the only person who absolutely loved this book, so just check it out. Next, I have The Love Hypothesis by Allie Hazelwood. This is a fake dating workplace environment. It's basically about this girl who used to date this guy, and it just didn't work out well. She really didn't care for him or anything. And now her best friend kind of has a crush on him and wants to pursue him, but she doesn't want to ruin the girl code sort of thing. And she can't really convince her friend to just go for it any other way other than to convince her that she is very much over him because she's dating someone new. So she basically goes up to the first person she sees, smacks a kiss on his face, and is like, see, I'm over him, I'm dating somebody else. And basically the person that she decided to kiss is a professor in the science department where she is a PhD student. And the story kind of works itself out that they end up fake dating each other, and it's a fun time. Next up, I have Boss Man by V. Keeland, which it starts off with this girl who is on a date at this fancy restaurant, and she's really not having a great time. So she goes to the bathroom, calls her friend, and is like, give me one of those calls in 5 minutes, get me out of here sort of thing. And another guy overhears her on the phone, and then when she hangs up, he's like, who the hell do you think you are? That's super, super rude, and you're kind of being a bitch. It's really hard to get a reservation at this place, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, who the hell do you think you are? Stop listening on random people's conversations. Stay the hell out of it sort of thing. And then she goes back to her table, and what do you know? The guy that overheard her ends up going to her table and pretending that he knows her, and he ends up crashing her date sort of thing. And it turns out to end up being a really fun night, but then they all go their separate ways. And then a month later or so, they bump into each other again, her and this weird guy that, kind of crashed her date sort of thing. And for whatever reason, it kind of works out that he ends up being her boss, and the story goes from there. It is a great time. It is pretty steamy, but not crazy or anything, and I just loved this book. Next up, I have Scandalous by LJ Shen, which is a little bit of a steamier book than the other books that I'm talking about in this video, but it is an amazing time and I highly recommend it. It happens to be the third book in the Sinner of Saints series, but it's all companion books, so it's okay to read just one, even though I highly recommend reading the entire series and in order, because it's one of my favorite series of the year. The first book is Vicious, second book is Ruckus, third book is Scandalous, and then the fourth book is Bane. So the thing is that Scandalous is the only one that's really a workplace environment sort of thing. You're basically following this guy who recently brought on another partner for his company. And then this guy has a daughter who needed an internship. So she ends up working in this office. And then, this first guy ends up having a romance with his new partner's daughter. So it's an age gap romance. It's also a forbidden romance, and it is also pretty steamy, but in a great way. So I loved this book. I don't think you need to know anything more than that, but basically, it's a great time. I recommend the entire series in general, but specifically Scandalous is a workplace environment one. Next, I have The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren, which is about this girl who, for whatever reason, gives in her DNA to this matchmaking site who says that they're going to find your soulmate scientifically through your DNA. And then she ends up getting set up with the guy who happens to be the owner of the company because they had a 98% match. The only thing is that she knows the owner of the company and she's not his you just fan sort of thing. The thing is that this company has never gotten a 98% match before, and they really want to see if it's going to pull through because they're about to like go public, and it would be really good for publicity and everything like that. So they basically pay her to fake date him and see if like, you know, their romance and the soulmate sort of thing ends up being real or not. So that's the gist of the story. It is a great time. It is not extremely heavy on the workplace, but because it is surrounding this guy's company, I feel like it was worth mentioning in this video. Next up, I have The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren, which is basically about this girl who has been working for this couple for like about 10 years now. She got a job with them when she was like 16 years old, and like they just had this like small furniture shop in like her small town, and now it's 10 years later and she has been promoted to the personal assistant for the wife. And this couple has kind of turned their little furniture store into like a whole brand, and now they have like a furniture line and an interior design reality TV show, and they're putting out like relationship advice books and like all that sort of stuff. They're kind of like a famous couple now. And the thing is that they are about to go on tour to help promote one of their new book releases, which is a relationship advice book. And the thing is that in their personal lives, they're not really getting along. Their marriage is kind of in shambles. So the thing is that this girl is the, you know, personal assistant for the wife, and then the husband has a personal assistant for themselves. And the two personal assistants don't really get along very well, but they both basically have to go on tour with this couple to make sure that nobody finds out that their relationship is kind of falling apart. So you get to follow these two relationships. You get to see the married couple as their relationship kind of goes downhill. And then you get to see these two personal assistants who don't get along so well kind of start a relationship. So it's a fun time and I really enjoyed it. And it also is a workplace environment-esque sort of book. So this is the next one for you. Next up, I have one more recommendation by Christina Lauren, which is Dating You, Hating You. This is one of their less popular books, and I totally see why. This wasn't like my favorite book that they've ever put out, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's another workplace environment book, so I wanted to recommend it. It's basically about these two people who work at competing companies, but they have the same job, and their friends sort of like set them up because they think that they'd be a great couple, and then they end up having like a one-night stand, and then they kind of like somewhat start a relationship, and then all of a sudden, right at the beginning of their relationship, their two companies decide to merge into one, and all of a sudden they are pitted against each other for the same position. So it kind of turns from a dating you to a hating you situation, and it's just a fun time. Next, I have 10 Rules for Faking It by Sophie Sullivan, which was one of my favorite reads of the year. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It's basically about this girl who, on the day of her birthday, walks in to her boyfriend cheating on her. So she absolutely freaks out. She runs to work where her best friend works with her. She works at this podcast station, and she barges into her friend's office and all of a sudden just like spews everything that just happened to her. The only thing is that her friend was in the middle of like doing a live show sort of thing. So everybody that was listening in just heard about her horrible morning, and she kind of like freaks out. She thinks she's gonna get in trouble, and then all of a sudden her boss comes in, and she doesn't really get along with her boss. She thinks that her boss doesn't really like her because he's kind of like super nice and relaxed to everybody else in the office, but he's really like official and like legit with her sort of thing. So she gets really nervous, and then all of a sudden her boss is like, don't worry about it, we're gonna spin this, instead of making it like some sort of scandal bad thing that happens, we're going to make it into like, you know, a new podcast. And we're basically going to do this whole bachelorette sort of thing. We're going to set you up on a bunch of dates, and then we're going to make a podcast about it. You're going to come on and we're going to talk about it, see how your dates went. And then we're going to let the public start voting for who they liked better sort of thing. And then we're going to narrow it down from like a bunch of guys to just like one guy who could be your new boyfriend sort of thing. And she's like, well, this sounds better than getting fired and in trouble, so I'll do it. And then she ends up having to work very closely with her boss to like set this whole thing up. And then, you know, the story's going to go from there, and she's going to end up having a romance with her boss. So it's just a great time. I highly recommend it. And if you are a fan of like the whole bachelorette sort of vibe, then I think you'll really enjoy this book. Next, I have Kiss My Cupcake, which is about this girl who is about to open up a cupcake and cocktails shop. And then right as she is ready to do her grand opening, this guy moves in next door and he is opening up an axe throwing and cocktail shop. So they don't get it along right off the bat. They're competing for new customers. They start messing with each other and trying to pull customers from each other's businesses and stuff like that. And basically it's somewhat of an enemies to lovers workplace environment sort of thing. And then throughout the book, all of a sudden, this new company opens up across the street or something. And all of a sudden, they're both nervous because that place is now going to be pulling both of their customers and clientele and everything. So then they have to start working together to try and save both of their businesses instead of letting this new guy come in and take over sort of thing. So it's a great time. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of tension. It's a dual POV. I had a great time reading this and I recommend it. And the last couple of books that I'm going to share with you are all by the same author, which happens to be R.S. Gray. So I have Make Me Bad, Not So Nice Guy, Anything You Can Do, and then Cold Hearted Boss. And all four of these books are really cute. They all have just a quick, easy to read sort of vibe, and they all happen to be taking place in a workplace environment. So I'll explain one at a time. Make Me Bad is about this girl who is a librarian and happens to be her father is the sheriff of the town, and he's very protective of her. And basically because of that, she is somewhat of a prude because no guy has ever really had the guts to ask her out or make a move on her because they're scared of her father. And basically she's now an adult, I don't know, 22, 25, somewhere around that age. And she's walking home from work one day and she basically gets mugged and she starts screaming, and then a random guy hears her and then comes over and helps her. And who do you know is this guy that came over and helped her? The bad boy of the town, the guy that everybody kind of knows has a reputation because he's really wealthy. He owns a lot of businesses and he's just that sort of guy. And anyway, he helps her out and then, they go their separate ways. And happens to be this guy, I forgot why, but he kind of got in trouble for some reason and he has to do some community service. And he totally could have gotten out of it because, he's wealthy, he has a lot of connections, but he didn't think that was the right thing to do. So he basically decides to go and work at a library to take off his community service hours. And then he gets assigned to the spot that this girl is working in, and now they're going to have to work together until he finishes up his community service hours. So the thing is that once they start, hanging out a lot in the library, she basically decides to ask him if he can make her bad because she decided that, he kind of fell on her lap and he's right in front of her. So why not ask? It doesn't hurt. And for some reason, he decides to say, yes, I will help you, turn your life around a little bit and do a few scandalous things. And then the story kind of goes from there. So it is a great time. I highly recommend it. It's a quick and easy read. Nothing bad to say about it. Next, I have Not So Nice Guy, which is about these two people who work at an elementary school together. They're both teachers and they are the best of friends. Ever since they met at orientation when they started their job at the same time, they're just kind of inseparable. The thing is that they both have had crushes on each other since they met, but it was never the right time because one of them was always dating someone else. And then throughout the years of their friendship, they always got the idea that the other person wasn't really interested sort of thing. So they never made a move. And then all of a sudden, they're both single at the exact same time. And for whatever reason, they decide to make a move on each other and it just goes from there. So this is a friends to lovers workplace environment that was just an adorable, quick, easy read. Next, I have Anything You Can Do, which is a enemies to lovers workplace environment book. And it's basically about these two people who grew up next to each other and they never got along. They live in this small town and literally their entire lives, they have always been pitted against each other. And everybody in the town knows that these two people don't get along. And they grow up, they both go to college, they both become doctors. And then all of a sudden, they both get offered this job to come home and work for this small family practice in their town. And they both accept, thinking that they are the only person who accepted because the guy is retiring that owns a family practice and they think that they could come home and then, they'll show that they can do a good job and then they'll inherit the practice. And they didn't realize that they are both going to be working with each other and pitted against each other for the family practice. And it takes off from there. And the last one I'm sharing is Cold Hearted Boss, which is basically about this girl who wants to get this job on this construction crew because they're paying really well and she really needs the money. So she kind of like dresses up as a guy so that like hopefully she could like slide her application into the pile and like not get noticed that she's a girl sort of thing. The thing is that the guy who's running the job, who kind of like owns this project and company sort of thing, recognizes her because a month ago when he was in town scouting out the location for this construction job, he kind of went to a bar and hooked up with this girl, and you know, he recognized her. And the thing is that she kind of stole his wallet, and it's like a whole miscommunication thing, but basically he didn't really forget. So he's like, oh my God, I found her again. Now it's time to get back at her. So he kind of hires her. And then once they all get to this job, because it's like an hour out of town, so everybody who's working on the job is kind of staying on site in like all these cabins, and she basically gets put into the cabin with the guy that is running the job that she stole the wallet from, because it's his intention to like mess with her sort of thing. So yeah, once they're like, you know, living together in a cabin and they're both working on the same construction site, the story kind of just takes off. And I feel like I didn't really explain this very well, but just take my word for it that it's a great time. It's a really easy read, really quick to get through. It's got a lot of great tropes in it, and I really do think that you'll enjoy it. So basically, that's about it. That was a lot of books to go through. I hope that you found some good recommendations in this video. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books, what you thought about them, or did you find any good recs that you plan to add to your TBR? Also, if you have some like workplace environment recommendations for me, then leave me a comment down below, because I'm always looking for good recs. But basically, yeah, that's about it. I love doing these sort of videos where I just give you like, you know, recommendations based off a specific trope. I've already done a handful of them already. I'll make sure that I have the whole playlist for them linked in the description below in case you're interested. But like, I've done Enemies to Lovers, Grumpy Sunshines, It's Always Been You. Like, I've done a couple of random ones before, but basically, if there are any trope recommendation videos you would like me to do, then make sure to leave me a comment again down below, because I'm always looking for, you know, ideas and stuff like that. So if there's something you want me to do, let me know. But basically, that's about it. So if you enjoyed watching this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not currently subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button. And anyway, thank you for watching. And until next time, enjoy reading.